Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 86 S to Give podcast. I am your host, Al, and I am so grateful that you have clicked on another episode of my podcast. We have finally entered daylight savings time, you guys, and I don't know about any of you, but I am feeling like a complete different person. I am like a better version of myself. I immediately am happier. I was out last night at trivia and it was bright out when I was walking there at 6:30. It was just crazy and I'm feeling so much better. I'm feeling like a much better version of myself, and I know that it will only continue to increase as the weather gets warmer, even though we've been having some really warm days here in Philly. But yeah, I'm just pumped. We made it through another winter. But yeah, I hope all of you are feeling the good energy as well now that the weather and the daylight is here with us on our side. In today's episode, we are going to be 86ing talking shit. We are running out of shit to talk, okay? We are going to be calling ourselves out a bit, and me included, because there's not a soul on this planet that has not said something negative about a person, whether they meant it or not. And so we're going to kind of dive into maybe how we get to that place, why we speak the way we do about certain people sometimes, and kind of some other healthier ways to vent or process our emotions without being hurtful or nasty and attracting negative energy into our lives and to other people's lives. So we will get all into it. I first want to say, this is all coming from a place of my own experience. So I'm not saying everyone needs to 86 shit talking, and I'm not calling myself out in this. I am a talker. Obviously, I have a podcast. If you know me in real life, you know I don't shut up. I love to talk, right? And combined with my form of processing things is to talk about them. I am an outward processor. So when you have that combination of somebody that loves to talk and needs to talk to process how they're feeling about things, sometimes it's really easy to slip into that shit talking or just being a little bit nasty instead of focusing on the situation and why that's frustrating, kind of getting a little bit more nasty towards the actual person, which is just unnecessary. And it's really easy to get yourself worked up when you're saying it to another person and they're agreeing with you, and then they've also maybe had experiences with this person and they kind of pile on and it just becomes this big thing. So if you're somebody that's also loves to talk and is an outward processor, you probably know what I'm talking about. Whereas sometimes you just accidentally slip into this shit talking conversation when you don't even mean for it to happen. You don't even realize how you got there, and then you reflect on it later and you feel terrible. That's kind of what happens to me, at least. So I'll definitely talk more about my experience with it all in a bit, but I wanted to say that because I think when we think of shit talking, we feel if people talk shit, they're horrible human beings. And I don't think that's true. I like to think I'm a good person that sometimes messes up. We all mess up and make mistakes. So, the first step is obviously being aware of it. And that's kind of what I've been reflecting on and going through recently in navigating how I want to process things in a healthy way that's both healthy for me and for the people around me. Because not only when I should talk to, I feel bad, but I'm also getting other people worked up. I'm getting the situation's getting blown out of proportion, and it just doesn't have to be like that, right? There's better ways. As always in these episodes, I like to also talk about why I want to talk about these things, and there's a number of reasons for today's episode. I just kind of talked about my why, or kind of how I fall into the negative talking, the nasty talking sometimes. But other reasons are just, first, I think it's something that humans do naturally when they process things. We slip into this, we're always assuming the worst in people and in things. And I try to, I've always said how I have a lot of faith in humanity and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes people make you question that faith in humanity, right? Or they make you not want to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you just have to get it out sometimes, So I think it's something that humans just naturally do, right? We assume the worst. We tend to think more negative before we assume something positive. And I want to change that. I want to be better at, just how I move through the world and the assumptions I make, I want them to make me feel better, right? We've talked tons of times on this podcast about telling ourselves a different story. So if we're going to make an assumption, let's assume something that doesn't make us worked up, doesn't make us hate someone, doesn't make us, lose sleep at night. So again, talking about all of that into this episode as well. And then secondly, I personally feel physically ill when I talk poorly about someone, because I wouldn't want someone to do that to me. And it doesn't feel good to bring all that negative energy up in me. And again, I just sometimes fall into that trap of piling on with someone else, or validating someone's feelings and then realizing I don't actually feel like that. I just wanted to be a fixer and a good friend and kind of agree and help them through whatever they're feeling. And then I feel bad because I'm wait, I just invalidated my own feelings to validate someone else's, and that doesn't feel good either, right? So there's a lot of nuances, there's a lot of nitty gritty details to this, and I feel like every time I do one of these episodes, I think people are going to be like, "Al, it's not that deep," but it is that deep, because we only have our life that we live, and I love reflecting and calling myself out and thinking deeper about the things that are important to me. So if this is something that you talk shit all the time and it does not faze you and you do not care how it makes other people feel, it doesn't bring you extra negativity, feel free to skip this episode. But if you're someone that falls into this trap sometimes of talking shit with people and then realizing, oh, I don't really want to do that, I don't feel that way, this might be the episode for you, because that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now. And yeah, I just want to be the best version of myself. And the best version of myself, when I picture that person, she doesn't talk shit on people, especially not behind their backs. She doesn't avoid, conflict or standing up for herself. So I want to be that person that I'm envisioning. So another reason why we're talking about it today, it's to help not only me, but maybe you become the best version of yourself as well, if this is something that you find yourself doing at times. I say all of that as an intro, a why, kind of my why, but just the human why, I think. And I want to kind of segue and start with the conversation of shit talking versus venting, because I know for me, a lot of times when I'm shit talking, I'll be like, oh my God, I'm just venting. I just need to get it out. And I don't think it's fair to categorize shit talking as venting, because it's not. There's a very distinct difference between the two, and we're going to kind of dive into that right now. But just telling yourself you're venting doesn't mean you're venting, right? You could still be shit talking. To me, venting feels like you're getting something off your chest, and you just are needing some validation to make sure that you're not feeling crazy, but you're really focusing on the situation and why the situation was maybe frustrating or disappointing or upsetting, rather than the person and being nasty towards them. That's when it falls more into shit talking, right? With venting, you're looking for that validation of your feelings, right? Which is human. We all need validation in our feelings. I love to validate people's feelings. I love to have my feelings validated. That's I think one of the most natural human things to do, right? But when we're venting, we're typically looking for a solution, right? We're trying to vent about something that's frustrating or upsetting to us to a trusted source. That's another keyword there in the venting definition. Talking to a trusted person, a mom, a therapist, a dad, a sibling, a really, really close friend that's maybe unrelated from the situation, doesn't know maybe the person that you're frustrated with personally, so they can kind of take themselves out of it and just focus on how the situation would be frustrating. So that's really key there. But doing that in a way where we're looking for a solution rather than just bashing, talking poorly about the person and being nasty, right? That is when we fall into shit talking, which is speaking poorly about an individual and making those negative assumptions and using a lot of those blaming words like they, you, she, instead of taking any accountability for the part that you might have played in the situation, right? Using a lot of those hurtful statements, just being nasty. Maybe it's fueled by jealousy. That's another thing we'll get into, is a lot of times when we're shit talking, we're jealous, or you have this, you feel some type of way, which is typically jealousy about this person, and it's coming out of you in a negative way. Yeah, it's just more of an attack on the person themselves rather than trying to find a solution. And a lot of times I feel like for me too, is I'll let a lot of little things build up, and then like that final little thing, I explode into venting, in air quotes, because I'm probably more leaning towards the negative talking aspect. But you just explode, and then it's like, well, this little thing like shouldn't have caused me to feel this way. So if you would have just addressed the 10 other little things that led up to that, maybe that person wouldn't even have done this last little thing to tip you over the edge, or you would have processed all the other little things. So when the next one happened, it's not this big boulder of anger and frustration that now has to explode, right? It's one little thing that you can deal with. So that's kind of the difference there. I hope I'm making sense. I literally like researched, because it's hard to differentiate yourself, right? Like sometimes it's easy to just be like, oh yeah, I'm just venting. And I can tell you I've done that a million times, right? I'm just venting. And then it turns into being so nitpicky and just being really like, just nasty, right? And I also want to say, now that we're even a little bit into this, I'm not talking about gossiping at all. I'm not talking about when somebody confides in me and shares something that's really secret or really personal to them. I promise I'm not going around sharing your deepest, darkest secrets with people. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when somebody like does something to me or in general that's frustrating and upsetting, and then I need to process it and how I want to be better with how I process it. So we're not even touching gossiping in this conversation today. I think that's a completely different thing than talking shit. You could talk shit while you gossip. I think those can go hand in hand, but I think gossiping is like sharing people's personal information, things that they told you in confidence, and then sharing it with other people, or, whisper down the lane of somebody told me this and they heard it from this. That's gossip, right? We're not talking about that. That is not what I do or struggle with. That's not something I participate in really. But I do find myself processing frustrating events in an unhealthy way sometimes, and that's what we're tackling today. Just wanted to clarify that. And so my personal experiences with when I find myself falling into that shit talking category is a number of ways. I feel like the 2, maybe 3 most common times it'll come out of me in that way is I really struggle when somebody does something in a way that I wouldn't do it. And that was really vague. I don't mean like tying their shoe or making their bed or cooking something a certain way that I wouldn't do it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like how they treat people and how they like the thinking of others, maybe being more considerate of people's feelings, like things like that, where I'm like, I would never like disclude someone like that. I would never not ask somebody if they needed a ride, or I would never like just little things of like, I would never invite myself to this thing, like things that my parents just like raised me to do. And I will get into how I work myself through this, obviously understanding that not everyone was raised the same way, but just things that are like core values that you would just like never find yourself doing, and then other people do it and it affects you. And you're like, sometimes I just get like personally offended because I'm like, that's not how you treat people, right? Like that's not, and I'm not saying I treat people perfectly. That's quite the opposite of what I'm saying through this entire episode. But like outwardly to people's faces, I think I'm a pretty good friend in person and coworker and just person to be existing around in general. And I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated, right? And so when I see other people either treating me in a way that I wouldn't treat them, or maybe someone's treating other people in a way that I wouldn't do, I wouldn't treat them, it personally offends me, because I'm like, this is my bubble. This is the world that we all have to live in. This is our corner of the universe. And I want it to be a positive place. I want to come to work and be excited to come here. I want to go hang out with my friends and not be nervous that someone's going to say something, rude or bully me or whatever. Like that's why I get personally offended. And it's not like, even if it's not directed towards me, like the other day at work, somebody they were making fun of something. This is going to be really vague because I don't know who all listens to this, but like 2 of my coworkers were like making fun of something that somebody else had to do that wasn't up to them, right? but they had to do it anyway. And like, it was making that person feel really bad and like embarrassed. And I said something and was like standing up for this person. And then the two original bullies were like, you seem really offended. Like, we're not even talking to you. And I'm like, call me offended or not. Like, I'm standing up for a friend, and I wouldn't treat my friends like this. You wouldn't like if your friends were treating you like this. And you say, oh, I wouldn't care because that's what society teaches men to think. But also, yeah, these two were men, of course. Who I think very highly of. This was just a one-time thing that I was like, hold on, we're not going to be doing this. But like, just saying things in a way that like not realizing how it's going to make people feel, that upsets me, whether it's to me or not. And if it's to somebody I care about, I'm going to stand up for them. That's what I'm going to do. And if that means I'm offended, I'm worked up, whatever. Like, I care, and I will forever care. That will be like my most favorite thing about myself until the day that I die, is how much I care about things that I care about and the people that I care about. So whatever, call me worked up, call me offended, sure. But I'm going to still say things that need to be said and stand up for people that need to be stood up for. And that's that. So sorry that was a vague example, but when people are saying things, whether it's to you or to someone else, that, you know, I wouldn't necessarily I wouldn't do personally, that upsets me. And then that turns into me like venting in a way that might not be so healthy sometimes. I would say another way that I find myself getting caught up in shit talking is when, like I said earlier, I let a bunch of little things pile up, and then I get to that 10th little thing, and it's like, okay, this person just doesn't fucking get it, like, blah, 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 like, and then I'm all worked up, right? Like, and that's really what bothers me in this whole thing, is that like, typically when you're shit talking, you're not having a conversation with the person that's frustrating you. So like, they're out living their life, doing whatever they're doing that's frustrating you, and not even realizing that it's frustrating you, probably, right? And now I am here talking to a friend in a negative, unhealthy manner, and then I am all worked up. I'm the one that's left feeling all like these negative emotions and like upset, and like this other person is just like out living their life fine. Like, and that could be handled with just having a mature conversation with the person that upset you, right? So I think that's like kind of another reason too why it's like upsetting, because it's like, I don't want to be feeling this. Like, one, you frustrated me, and now I'm upset, and you are just like out here like fine. Like, I don't want to be feeling this, right? And then what I think I struggle with the most is when I'm kind of caught in between two people that may or may not dislike each other. Maybe one doesn't like the other, but I have a good relationship with both people. And one person comes to me to vent, maybe shit talk about the other person that I'm also friends with. I really struggle there, because on one hand, I want to validate the person that's coming to me, because I've probably also experienced it, or I've seen it happen because I'm friends with everyone. You know, I get why they're feeling the way they do. I want to validate their feelings. Even if I didn't fully get it, I want to validate their feelings. That's what like my natural gut instinct to do when somebody comes to me upset or frustrated, is to like validate them. And what I'm trying to work on is finding a way to validate them without invalidating my own feelings about how I feel about the other person. But then on the other hand, I want to sometimes like protect that other person because I'm friends with them and I know their heart, and like I know maybe their intentions weren't what this person's, you know, taking it as. Either way, that's they're valid for feeling upset, but that's just, you know, it's just, you just get stuck in the middle. And the easy thing is to just like, especially when you've experienced maybe a similar thing with the person that they're venting about or talking shit about, it's easy to just pile on and be like, oh yeah, like I totally get it, like yada yada yada, this person, you know, they just don't understand, they do that all the time, like I don't understand, blah blah blah. It's easy to kind of get into this negative tunnel pattern with them, right? That then makes me feel bad because I'm like, actually I love this other person too, and I think very highly of this person and am grateful for my friendship, my relationship with this person. So you just kind of get stuck in the middle. And I can give a more specific, like, personal example. My boss and I don't think he listens to this, but if he does, he knows all of this, had a really rocky relationship the first like 6 months of me working at my job. It was his first time being a boss. And not only his first time being a boss, but his first time being a boss of a female employee. So it was a big adjustment and a learning curve for all of us. It was also my first full-time job. So we were all learning, right? And I had a lot to learn. Like, I hadn't been doing the work that he had been doing for 8-9 years before coming to where we work now. This was my first foot in the door kind of thing, figuring it out, right? And I had a lot to bring in some areas, but had a lot to learn in other areas. So it was a lot we were all going through a learning curve. And looking back on it now, it's like funny, but at the time he thought I hated him. I thought he hated me. Maybe there were some negative feelings that we both felt. And now I think I understand him and have maybe the closest relationship with him than anybody in our department, because I've put in a lot of work to understand him and not take things so personally, but also to teach him how to treat me and, call things out when they upset me. I'm not afraid to do that, and I'm proud of myself for doing that, and I think it's gotten our relationship to where it has. But also just being around each other. Like, now he knows how I am and knows what'll tick me off and things like that. So it's like worlds better than it was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. But now when, maybe he does something that pisses another coworker off and they want to vent to me about it, my like gut reaction is to be like, oh yeah, like he used to do that to me too, blah, 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 and like jump on, pile on. And then like I go home and reflect and I'm like, I'm actually like so grateful for him and all that he's taught me. And like, I love working for him and, the environment that we have. And I think like I don't feel maybe as negative as other people do towards him, and like I don't want people to think that I do think that which I'm really processing this outward right now, but I'm hoping maybe some people have been in this situation before where like, and I'm not blaming other people for me shit talking at all. I'm in total control of the words that come out of my mouth and how I decide to process things. But sometimes you just get caught in this like I said, like somebody comes to you and you're like immediately almost triggered, and it's triggered is like too dramatic of a word, but that's all I can think of right now is like you're just brought back to the place that you were when, 2 years ago, when you felt exactly the same way that this person is venting to you about. And you're like, oh yeah, like I remember how he used to do that to me. Like he's terrible, blah, blah, all these things. Right. And then on the other hand, you have like come so far with him that you want to almost protect and like stand up for him, vouch, and you're just stuck, right? And so that is kind of, similar. That could happen in any situation, like a 3 roommate situation, a 3 friend group situation, like anything. And 3 has always just been a tough number for me. My mom always said that. She literally like wouldn't let me have 2 people over for play dates. It was either 1 person or 3 people, so that there was an even number. There was 2 or 4 of us. Because I would get stuck in this situation where like somebody would feel left out, somebody would be upset by something somebody else said, but they didn't necessarily do something to hurt me. So like I am still cool and friends with this person, but now this person hates this. And it's just like, I couldn't handle it. Right. And so I'm finding myself in situations like this as an adult too. And I'm like, dang, I still like don't know how to handle this properly. Cause as a kid, you're like, okay, like whatever. But now I'm 26. I'm like, I want to be better when people come to me with things. And I was talking to my mom about this exact like example, and just like in general, it's happened in friend groups with me, it's happened at work, it's happened in so many situations. So like not talking about any specific example, but my mom just shared some good advice of like, 1, taking like 3 deep breaths before you respond. And like even maybe while they're talking, like just taking a few deep breaths to like slow down your thought process, slow down your reaction time. Because naturally you want to just like kind of hop on and pile on. But if you take those couple deep breaths and realize, do I actually feel like that? Do I agree with that? How can I validate this person in a way that isn't going to make my feelings about the other person that they're venting about invalid, right? So taking those deep breaths, asking yourself those questions, and not feeling like you have to like agree 100% with somebody when they're when they're talking crap on someone. Like, you don't have to agree with them. And she also shared some good advice of maybe like taking a step back from the situation and acting like you don't even know the person that they're venting about. Maybe you do. Maybe they are your coworker. Maybe they're your friend. Maybe they're your sibling, whatever. But taking a step back and acting like you don't know them. Like, forget everything you know about this person, because then you're like not even able to pile on, really. Like, you're not able to just like hop on the shit talking train because you don't know anything, right? And when you forget everything, you don't know, and you don't have nothing to pile on with. So just being like, oh yeah, like I could imagine that being really frustrating. That sounds really upsetting. You are so valid in how you feel. I would be upset too if I was in that situation. Like, just validating how frustrating the situation is rather than piling on with talking so negatively about the specific person. And that's something I really want to be better at when I validate others, because I love to validate other people's feelings. And I want people to feel like they can come to me and talk to me and all of that. Like, that is a huge value of mine. Like, I really love being that friend for people, and I don't want to like have a hard boundary of like, okay, well, you can't come to me to vent. Like, I just want to figure out a better way that works for me, and for the person, because it doesn't help anybody when they come to me and then I pile on and get them more worked up, right? They're already upset. So maybe there's a better way that I can validate them that kind of calms them down. And so that's what I'm working on when people come to me with the shit talking motives, right? Another really important piece of advice that she has given me for years and years and years, but reminded me of, was thinking about who you are talking to when you need to shit talk or vent, right? Talking to my mom about something a friend did that upset me doesn't make me feel bad, because one, she's a therapist, so I'm just talking to my therapist, right? Which is like the most confidential space. But also she's my mom, and that's like probably even more confidential than anything you could talk to a friend or anybody else about. You know, I've made a hard boundary with myself recently in the past like few months of like, if a friend upsets me or frustrates me or does something that I wouldn't do that is just kind of like off-putting, I'm going to my mom to vent, to talk shit about it, because that is a healthy, safe place to do it. And then I'm not feeling bad because I went behind this friend's back to talk to this friend about their other friend, and now everyone's in on this like thing that this person did. And it's like, that's not fair to anybody. It's putting the friend that I'm shit talking about in a bad light to their other friends, and then it puts the other friend that you're talking to in a bad situation because they're friends with that person too. And it's just like, it's just unnecessary when there's healthier, better options. And so maybe there's a hard boundary that you set, like, I'm going to talk to my coworker about my friends because they don't know my friends, or I'm going to talk to my mom about my boss when he does things that are frustrating. Like, you know, just having those boundaries so you're not like, because my mom, I mean, I talk to my mom all the time. She's like literally my best friend, and she knows what goes on, but she doesn't know enough to like pile on because she's not at work with me and doesn't see what's happening and hasn't interacted with my boss in a way to be able to pile on to how I'm feeling. So it's just a safer, healthier outlet to talk to, right? And so I've been really intentional recently about who I'm talking to, because sometimes you're frustrated. Feminine rage is real. You need to just freaking get it out in a negative way. Like, sometimes you just need to get the negativity out, but thinking about who and being intentional about who you're doing that with can change everything. Because at least for me, it's been really helpful, because like then I don't feel bad for like talking behind someone's back, because like my mom doesn't count. She's like an angel on this earth, and she's just validating my feelings and helping me calm down, and like doesn't really, not that she doesn't care about my friends or my coworkers, but doesn't really like their feelings in this don't mean anything. Like, she's there to help me through it. So, you know, and help me process. So that's kind of like the best part of it all, is that like there's no other piece of it other than her trying to like help me. There's no other like ulterior motive, right? Like, it's just her validating her daughter and her daughter feeling better leaving the conversation. That's all it is. So it's like, when you go and talk to a friend, it's like, oh, well, and yeah, also she did this time, and that really pissed me off, and, you know, I just don't understand her. Like, it just becomes this thing that now every little time somebody does something that frustrates you, you go to that same friend and you just pile on to this person. It's like, that is so unfair and unhealthy and nasty, and it just doesn't make anybody feel good. So yeah, thinking about who you're talking to is really, really a huge piece of it, I think, as well, because it's natural to need to get things out. Like I said at the top of the episode, I'm not perfect. I have to do that too. But again, talking to my mom or a therapist is a lot healthier than doing it to the one friend that's also in the friend group with the other person that I'm talking about, right? Like, that's a very different situation. So I think that is a huge, huge, huge takeaway from this conversation, because when she's been telling me that for years, and I've been on and off like good with it, but I feel like recently I've really been like, I don't need to tell this friend that this other friend did this thing. Like, I just need to get it out to my mom and then I'm fine, right? Another piece of advice that I think is really helpful is when something or someone like pisses you off or frustrates you, upsets you, whatever, ask yourself why you're feeling that way. Are you jealous of this person? Is it just because you simply wouldn't treat people like that? Is it like they really actually did something like super nasty and now you like are just upset? Like, what is the reason behind? Because if it's jealousy, you don't need to talk shit on it. Like, that is just like nasty, right? If it's actually something that you need to process and your feelings are really hurt by it, then you ask yourself, okay, who can I talk to that's removed enough from the situation that isn't going to pile on, is just going to help me process? Like, that is when you go through those steps of asking yourself those questions. So why am I feeling this way, right? Like, am I triggered by something they've done in the past, something somebody else has done in the past? Kind of uncover those feelings, because then it makes you feel like, it makes everyone in the situation a little more human. And it's just like, okay, like, they're not really what's upsetting me. I'm upset because of the 10 other things that they've done, or, you know, I've experienced today even. Like, maybe so many things have happened in this one day that are just frustrating, and then this last person says something then that kind of tips you over the edge. And it's like, okay, I'm not actually upset with this person. It's just so many things have happened today. So asking yourself why you're feeling that way. Slow down your thought process is huge. And then, you know, if it's still something you need to vent or talk shit about, think about who you want to talk to. The last thing I will say is, if you don't think there's anyone that you can talk to that will, you know, keep your words confidential or just, you know, kind of validate you without piling on, go to your journal. Journal about it. Write this person that frustrated you a letter, a fake letter that you're not ever going to send, but write them a letter in your journal saying like, it was really effed up that you did this to me. Like, get all of it out. Be as nasty as you want in your journal, because that is really a safe place. And if you think it's not, you have roommates, you live at home, whatever, rip it up, burn it, shred it afterwards. Just the thought or the act of getting your thoughts out on paper is so, so, so therapeutic. And so doing that that is honestly maybe the most healthy way, because literally no one will know. No one's going to see it, but it still helps you process. So, you know, maybe journaling, whatever, this person did this to me, it made me feel this way. This is why I'm feeling this way. This is what I'm going to do about it. Whatever. Journal whatever you need to journal, and then it's out, right? It's out of your head. You can kind of stop festering and building it up more in your head. And then rip it up, shred it, throw it in the trash, right? It doesn't need to exist in your journal. It's not something you really need to go back and read memories, right? It's nothing that you need to hold on to. So rip it up. No one will see it. Burn it. Put it in the shredder, whatever you need to do. I think that is probably like the most healthy way, really. Or like talk out loud to yourself. Like, sometimes I just talk to myself in the shower. I'm like, I can't believe they would do that. Like, just get it out in a way that like no one is going to hear, no one's going to know. Because like I've said a million times, we're humans. We have to get these feelings out. There's just healthier ways to do it, right? And so my final thoughts are that I don't think people who talk shit or vent in an unhealthy way are bad people. I don't at all. I think they're humans, and I think they're processing, and they're working with the tools that they have. And hopefully this episode maybe helped give some more tools and, you know, just made you feel not alone in a situation that maybe you're also struggling with. And I'm also not saying that like if you talk shit, you should feel bad about it. I'm saying if you do, like I do, here are some, you know, this episode was some ways to kind of help navigate that and just to be healthier in your processing methods. But like I said earlier, if this is not something that bothers you, does not make you feel bad, go on, do whatever you want to do. I'm not telling anybody that they're wrong for talking in however manner that they do. I just know how I feel afterwards, and I want to eliminate that as much as possible. So if that's something that you also deal with, hopefully this helped. Hopefully it was a little bit relatable. This kind of feels like a vulnerable one. I don't know why, but it's just been something that I've been reflecting on, maybe struggling with a bit and thinking about more recently. Living alone really does that to you guys. I live alone and all I do is think and talk out loud to myself and my dog. So you just really reflect on things, and I'm already super reflective. So now having a lot of time to just think and journal and reflect is making me, think more about how I can be the best version of myself. And, I want people to look at me and think, oh, she's a good person. And if I go behind people's backs and I'm shit talking to all my friends about my other friends, they're not going to think that. So, not that that's like my typical afternoon activity, but like still there's times where you just slip up and you get into that little negative bubble. And I just don't really want to do that at all. So, that is kind of my final thoughts on the episode. I just have to share this. I'm looking at my iPad cover here, and it's like a vision board kind of that I made actually going into 2024. And like front and center is 2 podcast microphones. I don't think you guys will be able to see, but maybe I'll upload the actual thing into the YouTube videos. How crazy is that? That's really, really cool. And I did that in 2024. I'm just realizing that. So yeah, that's actually really cool. I just had to share. I love a little vision board. Yeah. Wow, that's sweet. Okay. Well, that is all I have for you all today. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you for listening to episode 28 of the 86 F's to Give podcast. If anybody has any thoughts, any ideas for things that you're 86ing, you want me to talk about 86ing, please leave it in the comments, DM me, text me, call me, any of the things. I would love to hear what you're working on 86ing in your life and maybe talk about it here on the pod. Also, I hope you all enjoyed the episode with Marina. We really, really love doing that. I'll probably have her on again in the future, since she's local and we can do that here in the studio. But that was a really fun one for us. I'm really proud of that one. So I hope you all enjoyed it. If no one's told you recently, I love you, I'm proud of you, and you're kicking life's butt. And keep 86ing whatever you're 86ing. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.